We're meeting Matthew KANER. What have you been up to during this whole pandemic thing going on?
We had to close the wine bars to the public on the 15th of March. I'm feeling hopeful for the future, but there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be things that we probably will never go back to. When we reopened Covell, we realized it was actually a great opportunity to think outside the box. I believe we're going to do a concept within a concept called Curated by Covell. We're now doing a new subscription base where it's going to cost $50 a month. What that subscription will do is when you get charged, you'll get an email and it will unlock your ability to pick one of our themed boxes that we'll have available, and there will be many options each month. Let's say someone's on a budget and the $50 a month was a little too much for them. We're gonna have some boxes that are priced less than $50 as well. That $10 difference, because I think the lowest will be $40. That $10 will go forward and be a credit for your next month. We're trying to come up with ways that will still have people be familiar with the Covell experience, but also allow for us to pivot, adjust, change, given the fact we have no fucking clue what happens next.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Birdie. I'm with Sommtable and you're watching Finally Live. Today we have a great guest. Today we're meeting Matthew KANER, the co-founder and the director and of course a sommelier, hence why he's here today. I want to give you a little background on Matthew. It's very interesting. He began his career with Cask Wine Store in Santa Barbara, California. He then moved to Los Angeles in 2006 where he was given an opportunity to work with Silver Lake Wine. Now, in 2009, a close friend of his, Dustin Lancaster, and himself, they opened in Los Felices a bar called Covell. You may have heard of it. It's actually a bar concept that everybody's been talking about, and I'm very, very interested in speaking to Matt about this today. He was named Sommelier of the Year by Food and Wine magazine in 2013. And in 2015, Lancaster and a new partner called David Gibbs and the trio, they opened up Augustine, a wine bar in Sherman Oaks. Augustine itself was named Best Wine Bar of America by Food and Wine magazine. Another great accomplishment by Matt. Last year, along with two co-founders, Josh Onstad and Michael Curtis, they launched a subscription wine club, a great wine subscription wine club called Sommelier. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Sommelier. Which brings basically the sommelier experience in small production wine batches directly to the consumer. Something that we'll talk about. Last but not least, in 2019, Wine Enthusiast magazine named Matthew in the 40 under 40 tastemakers lists of 2019. So again, like one accomplishment after another. Matt, incredible. It's like you were born to do this. So welcome to Finally. It's so good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Say a little bit about yourself. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, but what have you been up to during this whole pandemic thing going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had to close the wine bars to the public on the 15th of March, and that was a kind of crazy experience, as you can imagine. It's one thing when you have to close a business because the sales are poor and they don't do well, and you got to close up shop and lay everyone off and literally close. But when the government mandates a shutdown, it's a whole different experience, a whole different psyche, something that had never happened in my lifetime before. So I went into self-imposed quarantine like all of us did. And, I've been at home. I was home alone for the first 4 weeks, just cooking 3 times a day, walking the Silver Lake Reservoir daily, which I live right above it. So it's nice to have that close. And then drinking a lot of beer. I'll be honest with you. I was drinking way too much fucking beer.
That's not a bad thing, is it?
Well, I love beer. You can probably, I'll show you a little bit. I'll move over, but I have some of the remnants of my beer purchases still sitting on one of my wine fridges, like Pliny the Elder and Society Brewing Company and Kern River. And, their tap rooms are all closed. So they're just selling direct to people at their homes now. And that's special. So I wanted to support. But then things picked up in April and kind of like what we're doing here, the rise of Zoom tastings and webinars and Instagram Live started to pick up, and people were able to, because they were home, because there's a captive audience, to use kind of a new mindset to adjust. And I got asked to be a part of a lot of things, which helped me get out of my own funk, to be honest with you. Yep. So I'm thankful for that kind of help out to dig out of the self-mire and it's despair. It's unfortunate because everyone's dealing with this differently. And in my career, the last time I took more than 1 or 2 days off back to back was probably a decade ago. Yeah. So to take a full month to myself and just reflect and sit back and, have no agenda, I'm thankful. I don't like why, but I'm thankful for that moment and for that ability. So, I'll always reflect back on that. But now we're in May of 2020, coming up on June of 2020, and we've reopened my flagship wine bar, Covell, as a wine store. So
Awesome.
2 weeks ago, thankfully, we reconcepted, reevaluated, and got it back open as a pickup and delivery only wine store. And so I worked tirelessly with my business partner, with our director of operations, and we hired back one employee to get our inventory on the website. So for the first time ever, Covell, which for those who know, Covell had 150 wines by the glass and no wine list. No wine list. No primary source document. No fucking manuscript to read. It was an experience. It
That was
was
the
a
concept.
conversation.
Right. That was the whole thing.
Now we're a wine store, and you can go on our website, and we have 100 wines available by the bottle. So we're adapting, we're adjusting, we're having to get over it in our own heads what Covell is, and
Right.
really at this point, it's all about adapting to the world around us. And I'm feeling hopeful for the future, but there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be things that we probably will never go back to in the habits that we had in certain wine bar contexts and hospitality. So I lament the things that are lost, but I'm also hopeful for the adjustment in the future.
We're going to go in there and talk about that specifically because there's a lot of interesting points there. But you're right. It's almost like this big, humongous reset button just fell on top of us. And now we're like, what's happening? Maybe it's a blessing. Maybe it's not. We don't know. But it's certainly something of a challenge. That's for sure.
Yeah, time will tell.
But time will tell. And it's interesting what's going to happen in 20 years, how we'll see what we did, if we did it right or we did it wrong.
Yeah.
But hey, I want to take our viewers back a few years because I know you started in basically the wine business, from a wine store, which is funny enough how it's coming full circle. Now you're kind of in a wine store again, but you've been extremely versatile. I mean, that's one of the key success points of your career, the fact that you're versatile and you can turn very quickly from one. I don't know, from one, not a crisis, but from one situation to another, and mold yourself and adapt, right? Adaptability is really the key for everything. And you're able to grow and be successful, hence, a lot of the things that you've done with passion and everything. So my question is, Bar Covell being what it was and still is extremely successful. What made you, like, during this time, sit down and say, I got to pivot, I now got to do something else. I have to think outside of the box, which I did when I started this new concept, which was really to be, something different, something completely outside of the box anyway, and I'll do it again. Yeah. How did you get into that frame of mind?
Well, when we first were closed for about 5 or 6 days after, I personally was doing concierge pickup and deliveries for both Augustine Wine Bar in Sherman Oaks, you mentioned, which I'm a co-founder of, and until March of 2020, I was an owner. I'm no longer an owner of the business, and Covell. So in the first 7 days after the whole shutdown happened and we let all of our staff go, I realized, people do want to support and it's great, but there was so much unknown. And we didn't know how the virus was spreading, really. We didn't know if touching a bottle of wine meant we can get sick. We didn't know if everyone was going to be okay wearing masks and having hand sanitizer coming out of every orifice. And, it's crazy. All of a sudden you have to adjust like a snap of fingers, right? So I personally didn't think it was worth it to put myself at risk. So we stopped that. And then weeks later, the government, they passed the CARES Act, which had a lot of things for individuals, monetary help, but also some payroll protection, the payroll protection plan loans. And thankfully, Covell and then all of my business partner, Dustin Lancaster's businesses that applied were able to be given a PPP loan. So that moment became really pivotal, that we then were on the clock to either use the money for the forgiveness ability or really reconcept and be smart about how you use that money to the business's advantage, because paying rent is going to continue to be a really challenging thing in the future. Our rent is built to be a $1.5 million business, not to be a wine store that's open 5 days a week for 5 hours a day.
Exactly.
So we got to figure out how to best use those funds. But the pivot made sense because we wanted to stimulate some sort of, we wanted to get people back to work somehow. And it's not a lot right now, but we're hoping that it builds to be able to bring more people back. And it also made sense given early in May, it was pretty clear to us that Los Angeles County is not going to open up just back the way it was for a while. We don't believe until August or so that they'll allow dine-in to happen again in LA proper. And so because of that, that meant we had 3 more months to figure out how to do some sort of commerce. And wine is a big time asset. Thankfully, if you keep it in a temperature controlled room, it doesn't go bad. But it also costs money to not only make people happy, but to be able to use our assets. And so with my experience, I was able then to go back, my past retail experiences, we were able to quickly reconcept and kind of get the doors back open in a virtual sense quickly.
Now, I know you don't do. Okay, so Matt, the other thing that's interesting, and I know this was the concept behind Covell, was to have 150 or more different types of wines available by the glass, which is an incredible feat on its own. But now, you're doing something which is going to, because of everything that's going on, it's going to change, obviously, again. So my question is, and you may remember, you and I were introduced by Rita Nabeiro, the winemaker from Adega Mayor. And, here we're talking about these classic old world wines versus now these new world wines, which are closer and perhaps even, perhaps themselves are going through growth themselves and variety and taste and everything into different types of, into a different types of approaches. How is that relationship going to change? Are you going to change your menus, which you don't have any, but are you going to change the concept to adapt to a localized inventory, or are you still going to go worldwide, old and new world?
It's a great question. And so what I can tell you is that before any of this happened, California wines, and I don't want to just say California, but the bulk of it is California. So American wines and encapsulation of Washington State, Oregon, New York State, Virginia, Texas, Michigan, Missouri, et al. Any of the states that we represent, Pennsylvania, Vermont. There's not a lot, but there's a few outside of California that make that high quality stuff that we're inspired to work with. California, though, represents about 30% of what we sell before March 15th, 2020.
Right.
Now, we're not looking necessarily to change exactly the breakdown of what we sell, but we are going to have to trim back our inventory because I used to be able to spend a lot of money per week for new wines. And thankfully, we sold a lot of wine, so we could always justify the expenditure. But now, if they're going to limit our capacity by 20 or 40, however many percent, it looks like we'll probably be able to open to dine in with 25 or 50% of the capacity you used to allow. So that's a limitation of 50 or 75% less. There's no way you're going to be able to have the same amount of inventory. It's impossible.
Right.
So the wine store interim, this little in-between period, allows for us to sell off great wine at a very remarkable price. I mean, it's all retail. I looked up wine.com, Wine Searcher, my favorite wine stores in LA. If they had the same wine or if the winery itself was selling it direct on their website, I price it the same as everyone else because that's the only fair way to do it when it's online. The thing about the economics of a wine bar is you're paying for the service, the hospitality, the seat, the fact that someone's going to bring you a glass and tell you about the wine. Someone else is going to clean the glass. Someone else is going to clean up your crumbs when your cheese plate's done. So when you don't have that sort of experience, you just can't also have the price tag with that. So it's a totally different thing. And though, I'm a fan of wines from all over the world. My first love was the Northern Rhone Valley and also Burgundy. I realized quickly it was hard to afford those wines daily, so I've kind of changed my habits.
Right.
But people like Rita and her family in Alentejo, and my friends in Vino Verde and up in the Douro, and my friends in Pajara and all these great regions, I will continue to tell their stories because I love what they do. We're just going to have to be a little bit more specific about how we do it in this new mindset. So what it looks like will happen, and I'm not going on record and saying this is what will happen, but this is kind of the mindset that we're playing with. We have some time still. I believe we're going to do a concept within a concept called Curated by Covell, which will be a new mindset of this kind of new world adjustment period, whatever it's going to be. And we'll probably whittle it down to more like 40 or 50 wines that'll be available monthly.
Mhm.
and maybe they'll have a commonality. Maybe they'll all be from one region or one country. Maybe we'll just say fuck it and do anything from anywhere. I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what, but the 150 that we had will definitely be truncated down just because we can't in the kind of the mindset you have to have in business is you're forecasting, right?
Right.
And the current information we have, you can't forecast at all. There's
Right.
nothing you can forecast for except for chaos.
Right.
And that's absolutely no way to make a business plan. So we're trying to come up with ways that we'll still have people be familiar with the Covell experience, but also allow for us to pivot, adjust, change, given the fact we have no fucking clue what happens next.
And it's interesting because this actually gave way to a new business idea, a new business vertical that you weren't really expecting. I mean, you probably wouldn't have really done this if it didn't have, if this didn't happen, right? Or would you? Maybe you would have. I'm not sure.
So there's been some kind of desire, I should say, in my life to work a normal work schedule. I forget what that's like. I usually work anywhere from 60 to 70 hours a week, depending on what's going on. And I'm not behind a bar that much, but it's like you wake up at 7:30, you're working by 8:39, your day ends at 10 p.m. It's just a common thing. It's what happens in this world. And it's
Right.
7 days a week. To take a day off is rare in my world. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to kind of trim back my responsibility levels and also think of the future because I want to have a family. I want to have a wife. I want to have kids. I want these things. And it's
Exactly.
going to be hard to do that in the world I currently allow myself to exist. So having a wine store has been something that's definitely come up in my mind. But another segue, which I know you want to talk about anyway, which is the concept of this wine club that we
Sullivan.
brought
Yeah.
up, Sullivan. There's talk of that down the road becoming an actual location with a store and with more of a community behind it. But when this whole pandemic hit, Sullivan actually kind of got put on pause for a moment.
Mhm.
And when we reopened Covell, we realized it was actually a great opportunity to think outside the box, literally, think
Right.
outside the Sullivan box. And instead of doing the 3 bottles a month for $80, which was what we had been doing for the last year, we're now doing a new subscription base where it's going to cost $50 a month, $50 per
Mhm.
month for your subscription. What that subscription will do is when you get charged, you'll get an email and it will unlock your ability to pick one of our themed boxes that we'll have available. And there will be many options each month. So that $50 will be basically a credit that you'll get to then put forward to choose which box you want. Maybe 1 month you want all rosés, 1 month you want all sparkling, 1 month you want French only, 1 month you want Italian, 1 month you want all orange wines. We fucking got you. We're going to nail this for you. And it's going to be a way for not only that, so you can choose that way, but you can add another box if maybe one other one inspires you and you can't pick.
Yeah.
There'll be a way for people to I don't like using the term upsell, but there'll be a way for added sales. And
Or
another
you could
thing too,
share it, or as a
say
gift or
again.
something. You could share it or
Yeah,
give it, or yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then another great part is like, let's say someone's on a budget and the $50 a month was a little too much for them. Maybe we're going to have some boxes that are priced less than $50 as well. That difference, that $10 difference, because I think the lowest will be 40. That $10 will go forward and be a credit for your next month. So you're not going to lose money. You're not going to, we'll be mindful of the fact that also budgets are changing. The thing we learned the most was that our audience was smaller at $80 a month. It just wasn't as big as we were hoping. So we're going to try to bring it back a little bit, open up the world. And what's great about this is as soon as the idea happened, we put up on the Covell website 6 different box ideas that are under the Covell Wine Club 3-pack boxes on our website. If you guys go to barcovell.com in the order online tab. And in the 4 or 5 days of service we've had to sell these boxes, I think I've sold something like 20 or 25 of them. So
That's
it's really, really encouraging.
It's working. And you know what's interesting is you're going to go into this niche, or if you will call it a niche. It's not a niche, but when you go to wine.com and you're looking for wine that's not in the bottle, let's just say you want a bag and box, or let's just say you want it in a can, because man, I've been seeing some amazing wines in the can, like Ramona's and all these different ones that are out there right now. And you're going to be able to bring that into the fold, right? I mean, it's not just a bottle of wines. Would you consider other sizes, other kind of, other kinds of brands like that?
So we've got ideas for doing things like a curated box, like a cheese night, where it's, like a bottle of Jura wine and then a pack to do raclette. do an things like that. So yeah, we could definitely talk about doing like, I have good friends that have Nomatica, amazing canned wine. We have I'm friends with Jordan who has Ramona, and that's delicious. We are
Yes.
definitely open to other great things like that. And what's funny about this whole kind of reset, as you called it, and you're totally right about that. I used to think I knew a lot. Now I don't know a fucking thing. I'm open to any idea that
Right.
makes sense, that people want. I'm here to do humbly what I believe. I probably should have had a more open mindset before, but also like when you have a wine bar that people go to, you're not open to changing because you don't have to, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So what's actually crazy about this whole thing is Covell and even Augustine have been licensed the whole time to sell a bottle of wine to go. We could have been doing this all along.
Yeah.
It took a novel coronavirus to have us do it.
But
Who
amazing
knew?
that you hit the ground running with this whole thing. It just seems like you had it in you. You didn't know it at the time, but it just took this whole thing to happen to actually realize you had it available for you. And I think it's going to be great. I have a question. I'm sorry to throw this on you,
Yeah.
just because I can't get this answer from anybody. There's a huge glut of grapes out there. I don't know if you know, but they're asking us to
Yeah.
curtail 5%, 10% production, and that's a huge, not only in the U.S., all over the world. So 2019, we're going to be okay. I think prices are really going to go down in a lot of production now. But for 2020 and this harvest, what do you think is going to happen? You're
So
cutting
I
back.
was
Yeah, I mean, you're cutting back. Restaurants are cutting back. Nobody's buying. I mean, we're buying online, but where's all this glut going?
I was set to give what was going to be a kind of uh, a negative wine seminar. I hate to say it that way, but it's a big wine conference in Paso Robles that happens, the Central Coast Wine Conference or something like that. I forget the actual title now, but it was meant to be on the 24th of March. And they had me from the retail side. They had a guy who was representing the kind of vineyards and agricultural side. And all of us were coming back to the same thing. They wanted to talk about, the state of the business. And from his perspective, he kept saying, there's so many vineyards that no one's going to source from, and the
Right.
fruit prices are going to go down. Everyone kept planting as many vineyards and as many vineyards as possible. And unfortunately, what happened is you reach this, kind of max. You're maxed out on the ground you can put grapes in, and
Right.
there's no one to buy it. So what does that mean? That means there's a bunch of fruit that someone's being paid to farm that there's no market for,
Right.
and especially if there's wineries who have to produce less wine and there's less retail partners to sell through. Ultimately, what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh,
Bank
yeah.
loans are going to get defaulted on. Leases are going to get broken. And I think ultimately the rise of the home winemaker might come back. Truly. I mean, that's
Interesting.
very possible.
Yeah, come and farm the grapes yourself and grow them yourself. Maybe what do you call it when you sell plots in your farm? Whatever that means. But maybe we're gonna
Like
go back
like sharecropping almost.
sharecropping. Where people go
Yeah.
back to the land and on the weekends they grow their own. Who knows? That might be
Yeah.
that's a good idea. But I tell you, this is the big old equalizer. I have to tell you, it's like it's been flattening everybody. We are all in the same starting gate as everybody else, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. I love it, to be honest with you, because I'm seeing some great potential, great opportunities. Of course, I'm seeing a lot of hardship, obviously, which nobody wants. But so let's just fast forward to 20 years. And this is kind of like an unfair question, but 20 years from now, let's just say, you made the right moves. Everything was exactly what you should have done during this crisis. What do you think that picture looks like in your view? Things that you've done, you did it right, and fast forward.
Yeah. 20 years from now, I truly believe that I will probably have done more media stuff, more TV or more online platform style media projects, whether it be on location or interview style. This is something that I've personally wanted to move into, and I've been honing in that craft and trying to get better at it and, flexing the muscle at it.
Yeah,
I want to also be able to have residents all over the world. I want to have apartments in all the cities that have inspired me that I've traveled to. So I'd
yeah,
like to live throughout the year in places like Porto or in Lisboa or in Barcelona or in Vienna or in Adelaide Hills or in Cape Town, Franschhoek, or in Uruguay, Montevideo or Jose Ignacio, or whether it be Chiloé Island in Chile or Santiago. I want to live anywhere and everywhere, and I want to have the means to do so. And honestly, my biggest thing, I do want to live on a vineyard and I want to grow grapes and make wine. I'll keep it small and keep it humble. I have a small wine brand I've been making since 2007, and
Really?
I got to think forward to something else. That
Okay.
AMFM will not be the end all be all for that. So
Mhm.
I want to have my own production, my own vineyard. But truly, I've been for the last couple of years trying to, within myself, transition into the more mentor role. So the kind of things that I would like to be able to do are take online kind of webinar things like this one-on-one with people, answer their questions, help them find their footing, how they can entry into the wine world. I actually had a conversation like this today at like 12:30. A guy reached out to me and asked, how do I get into wine? And I did a half an hour seminar with him. And, I believe that that could be helpful. Whether my opinion means anything to anyone, it's not up for me to say. But if
Yeah.
I can inspire people to find their path, that mentorship is something I've been lucky to have from many people throughout my career. And I know how important it can be. So I'm trying to kind of go into that more sociable mindset. How can I give back? How can I help mold people in the industry? And, there's a custodian nature to this. And since I don't have like family vineyards for generation, I don't have that custodial nature, but I'm trying to figure out how to help people find their footing within the industry. That's something I can do.
Well, those are great words, and not only that, I mean that is so on point with what you do, and it's very clear when you did Covell that you were able to get your staff to actually forget the menu, not show any of that, but really have a conversation with the client. And to have a conversation with the client, get kind of a tone of what it is that they're like, and what you could ask them, hey, who's your favorite movie actor, and automatically know, okay, well, if you're a happy person, then this is a wine for you or whatever. But you're able
Yeah.
to that. I mean, and it was so difficult to get the staff to make this happen uh, in a real world scenario where you actually have to pour the wine and not lose money in the back end and all that. But now you're going to have
Right.
to do it again on the digital side, and you're consulting people on that. So really, I mean, that's your next challenge. So the custodial side is really coming through, and I can see that.
Thank you. It's the best analogy I can make. It's kind of the same time I've pivoted away from ownership in my business life. What I realize is our lives are not like a sailboat. You don't just move the sail and all of a sudden you're going west.
Right.
It's more like a barge. This is a freight tanker coming from China or Korea, loaded with weights and pounds and so many different things that are going to go into port and be sold. And to move that wheel a degree takes time and takes
Yes.
patience and takes foresight. So there's a life philosophy that I really want to share. And I think it's very important. This is something that I'll probably end up writing a book about or doing a webinar about. But I feel like in the world today, especially in American life, but especially in the modern world, we're very shark-like. We see something, we go after it. You set your sights on something, whether it be, I know I'm going to have this job, or I know I want this girl or this man as my boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or whatever. You see things that you desire, and the kind of immediate response is attack, 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 get it, take
Yeah.
it, it's mine.
Yeah.
The problem with that mentality is sometimes what you saw was actually a stone, and you hit your nose and break your teeth, and your nose is bleeding, and then another animal comes and eats you because it tastes your blood, or you eat something else that was contaminated, and then you have a stomach problem, and then you die of stomach cancer.
Yeah.
I'm talking in shark terms, so I don't exactly know all the things sharks go through, but a lot of times because of their poor eyesight and because they think they know what they're seeing, they go 0 to 60 at something and they miss 95% of the time.
So
Not
interesting.
all of us, not all of us have a 5% success rate. Some of us have like a 0.005% success rate. So what I'm trying to get people to do is be less shark-like
Mhm.
and be more like a jellyfish. A jellyfish gets carried by the current.
Yeah.
It pulses, it experiences along the way. It gets carried into experiences it would not otherwise have if it was more shark-like in its approach. And so I'm not saying stop being like a shark. I'm saying be less like a shark and be more open to being carried by the world, by the tides, whatever experience you might think is out there for you. If you're more open-minded, the path that you walk down can be paved by people you never knew existed. Experiences are right there around the corner waiting for you if you allow them to happen. And so for me, that's an important life philosophy that I've come up with. I'm starting to develop, and I really want to be able to share that with people because I think in America, we're so specific at well, my parents told me to be a doctor, so I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to have a kid by 35. I'll have the picket fence a day later, and I know exactly what I want, and I'm going to get it, and it's mine. And that's not how it works for everyone.
It's not. Be careful what you wish for. That's always been the case. A lot of people think, the white picket fences, that's it and the end of be all, but it's not. I mean, I'm one to tell. I love that life, but it's not mine anymore. And now you really have to kind of do what you're saying. You have to philosophize this a little bit and realize that really the happiness is in things like you were saying, traveling, like being like that jellyfish, crossing the ocean slowly and taking in all the beautiful and not so beautiful things that life throws at you. So absolutely, I love the fact that you're able to bring this philosophy, this DNA into everything you do, Matt. I mean, it's really incredible. Really,
Thank you.
really. So I'm going to ask you this one word, which I ask everybody else, Matt, and it's sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. But can you define this and everything else we talked about, the world of wine, in one word, and then kind of tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, why you chose that word?
Community. It's for me, it's simple. It's community. It's the fact that it takes a village of people to create wine. It takes a village of people to move it from its creation to a new home. It takes a village of people to sell it to others. It takes a village of people to communicate what that is to people. So it's not just alcohol in a glass. Truly, this is a description of so many different people's monetary choices, investments, being an heir to a family heirloom and being given vineyards, custodian nature, as we talked about earlier. So that community for me is something that's very important and has directed my way of existing in the wine world. I no longer think about it as me and them. It's we're together. It's all together. It's interlinked. And so wine for me is gastronomic, very much so. It goes with food. We in America, unlike a lot of European countries, use it as cocktail. It's not quite how it goes in Europe. It's always with a meal. But we're trying our best to learn better or maybe more applicable applications. And the only way to do that is to bond as a community and have these conversations. So for me, community that's where I start. That's for me the end all.
One word, community. So everybody remember that. And I tell you, this brief voyage we had with you, this incredible experience we had with you, I cannot wait to come back and ask you a few more questions a few months later, if you don't mind, because where you're going with this, this is exactly what people need to know and they need to be on top of. So, man, I really appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Your love, your passion, and this being that you are, and so I really appreciate it. And with that, I want to say thank you, and I hope you'll come back soon.
My pleasure. See you soon.
See you soon.